Hello, my Web3 fanatics. Today we have the pleasure of meeting with FLEXY NFTs. I'll let them kind of do the intro into everything that they do. But for a little bit of context, this little picture behind me, for those that are watching, is one of their products. And so, super excited to meet with them, hear a little bit about their origin story, and kind of see where the conversation goes. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, if you guys want to go ahead and kick it off, I would love to see a little bit about what your guys' background is. I imagine a lot of this will start with Jeff and Mike, into what you had done prior to Flexi, and really what kind of led you to the original founding of Flexi in general.
Sure. Yeah, I'll jump in here first, but Mike and Austin, feel free to enhance or jump in as needed. But our origin kind of goes back. I guess we're a 43-year-old sign company that has been making commercial signs all over Minnesota and actually all over the country. We're based in Minnesota with a couple of locations where we do, I would say, like, let's call it 80% of our business is all the big light up stuff outside. So you walk into a subway or something like that, and you've got the sign out by the road, you've got the sign above the door, and then maybe some interior signage that might all be branded. That's basically what we do every day. Create, basically bring people's brands to life in a very visual communication. And yeah, that it's been a long legacy of developing that. We've got our own manufacturing capabilities just north of Rochester, Minnesota, and we have our own design capabilities. Austin is our one of our designers in our Twin Cities area office, and we have another designer down in that area, fabricators, installers. We've got all of our own boom trucks and things that go way up high in the air, and people are all harnessed in, and basically create signage for people. But about I guess a year and a half ago, when beginning of 2021, when NFTs were starting to come around. Actually, I'll back up even a little bit further than that. In fall of 2020, Mike and I were on a virtual 4Ds with the Sasha Group, which is owned by Gary V and team, and we wanted business advice and marketing advice for a new product that we were launching. It has nothing, well, I shouldn't say that it doesn't have anything to do. Some of it's actually in Mike's background there. But it was a different brand that we had launched. Him and Austin were working on, different designs and things to make for background branding, similar to what I have in my background, similar, now Gabe to your Flexi, and Austin has our sign company brand in his background. So in Zoom call type settings during COVID, we were like, hey, let's come up with this idea that people can put actual signage in their background. So we went to 4Ds virtually because they weren't hosting it live, and talked about that concept. It didn't really get a lot of legs. It was kind of stuck in research and development world perpetually, and we don't even we do things with that kind of through our signage world, but nothing with that brand. It was called Influential Goat. So fast forward then to let's call it February timeframe, and Nick Dio, who was the head guy over at 4Ds at the time, reached out to us, 4D alum, and said, hey, Gary's got this new thing going on. They're called NFTs, and he's got his own project coming out. Do you guys want to hop on a Zoom call and check out what it's all about? And I was like, of course, anything Gary's got going on, I want to investigate this type of a thing and, at least hear it out. So there was maybe 50 of us on a Zoom with Gary, and he's kind of talking about NFTs and what they are, and how it's going to change the world and things like that. He's scarfing down chicken wings and going, off on this whole topic and everything. And after that, the seed kind of had been planted from that. So then it was like, at least for me, and I know Mike too, it was like research, 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 everything that Gary and the, most NFT communities preach about doing research. Yeah. And that just led to, us minting, VFriends, and then other things, and I mean, basically entrenching ourselves in the NFT community. Mike and I started talking about it quite a bit, and then Austin, being an artist in real life or in his personal life, he can tell you his story, but I know he was familiar with it on the fringes and whatnot, and we all kind of started talking, and eventually we were like, what do we do with NFTs? How do we get involved? What are the concepts that we can do? And forever, I know, me personally, I was just stuck on NFTs themselves. Like, can our brand do something with an NFT? Meaning, make an NFT, offer an NFT, come out with a collection. I was really stuck there. And eventually, as we kind of started talking, we were like, why don't we just use what we do every single day in manufacturing and sign technologies and, Austin's art experience, and why don't we just make really cool things in the manufacturing space for in real life things that people can make from their digital files, which is basically what we do every day, but in a little different manner, starting with the interior concept similar to, the alligator that you have. So then basically we said, all right, Austin, here's all of our, here's our handles on OpenSea. Go check out all of our stuff and, come up with cool things. And he just started going crazy and, really designing different, taking the NFTs and adding a lot of art elements to them that weren't just the profile pic itself, elements kind of surrounding it. And we really just started going down the road of, this is going to be, what we do. We have to present concepts to people, that what they can do with their NFTs, and hopefully, they'll like those concepts and start buying them to, curate an art piece essentially, that they would want as a legacy piece in their home or their office, or, in a business or something like that. And kind of go from there. So then we really started kind of getting momentum fall of last year, and then when VCon hit in September or October, we were like, holy crap, this thing's going to be in our backyard in Minneapolis. That has to be our launch date at 100%. We got to be ready for VCon, or maybe launch right before it, kind of talking about the marketing plan and all that. And we really aimed everything that we were doing at launching around VCon, because it was in our backyard. And we ended up doing that. We sponsored a number of different private parties, the first one being Sal's event at kind of a pre-VCon party. And that was, from then on, it was like, all right, we have something here. We're getting a ton of interest. People really love what this hat is and represents, and how cool it is to see live. And then from there we can maybe continue the story as we move along here. But Mike, Austin, do you guys have anything to add from an origin perspective?
Let's see. Well, yeah, to continue with kind of what Jeff was saying, we had a display at Sal's event. And everybody just kept on engaging into these products. And then we were, like Jeff said, we had something, So once Austin started creating all these beautiful pieces that are layered, we kept thinking of, material wise, we kept thinking of lighting, we kept thinking of all these different things, because we want it to be higher end, because, the exterior stuff is, you have to worry about weather, but this is something that people are going to be looking up to, touching, and getting close to. So the amount of detail that we put into these things are extremely high. I mean, we take our time and we look at every aspect of the layering, where the light shines through and whatnot, which Austin can probably explain a bit more about that. Um, yeah, do you want to chime in a little bit about the layout or like the layering of the Flexies?
Sure, and I do want to say too, Jeff covered everything, but
Yes, we're done.
the, the
Cool.
the
That's
name
all, guys.
Flexi, it yeah, yeah. But the name Flexi sort of originates from that want to flex or display your NFT artwork. It's not just on your wallet, on your phone. It's in your home. Lights up your space. You're able to display it like a trophy in your trophy room, right? And so I think what Mike's kind of explaining, the detail orientation of what we do is really important because when you're creating a physical product that can light up in your home and display proudly this piece you've collected and likely spent a lot of money on, it's important to have all the nuances of where the lighting comes through, and how there could be what we call bleeding spots of the light that could cause issues with the imagery. And so a lot of the design process is focused around making sure we don't have those issues, and also creating something that's unique with the piece of art you've spent money on already. Because everybody's got a Bored Ape or a V Friend, but not everybody has a V Friend in a cool, unique background that they can say is only theirs. So I think that's kind of what really sparked the interest that we're exploring, is just being able to fully represent this thing you're collecting.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was at Sal's event as well. That's where I met Mike initially, and it was definitely one of the centerpieces that just couldn't not catch your attention as soon as you walked in the room. And so it was really exciting to meet Mike and the team and learn more about the product itself. Jeff, I have a question for you on what you had mentioned. You said that you were on a call with like 50 people back February 2021. Was that like the infamous call that everyone talks about from Gary Vee hitting up like Mr. Beast and Logan Paul and Mark Cuban and telling them to buy crypto punks and NFTs are this big thing? Is that call, or was this a separate one?
No, I don't think I would like to think that I was on the call with those guys, but no, it was absolutely not that. Yeah, it was just the alumni, some alumni that were on that from past 4Ds in the Sasha group,
Hmm.
that had been a part of it. So a bunch of small business owners, basically all over the country, that were on there, and it was just a Q&A. I mean, we were just like I say, Gary's on there eating, and it was super casual, and he's talking about this, and people are asking him questions, and even people on his team were asking him questions, and it felt just so new, and so um, you didn't even know what to ask,
Right.
right? I mean, it was like, I
Yeah,
don't
you
even
don't
know
have
what
any
the hell you're
idea.
talking about. Yeah, so it's like, well, what's going to happen here? And he didn't even have necessarily at that time real life examples of how it was going to, go into, like we know now, talking about NFTs and where they're going to go. It was, just something that had to do with building intellectual property. And he said several times, which I know he's said a lot in social media, but imagine if you owned the original hand sketch of Mickey Mouse, or
Yep.
things like that. So he was using references like that, but it wasn't even a commitment type thing. Like he was definitely asking for support from people that had supported him, you know, bought services from them, which we all did. Um, but it was more in true Gary fashion, offering an insight to a future, world that's still to come, and he's way ahead of us. So it was more or less, hey, I'm just going to get out there and start, not only on social media and whatnot from a content perspective, but hey, Nick Dio set up a captive audience of people that we already know somewhat, going through our program, and let's just explain things and try to, develop the buzz, so to speak.
So you started doing research after this call. I imagine all of you did in some extent. What was the thing that really clicked for you that made you say, "Oh, that makes sense"? Was it the Mickey Mouse thing, or was it something more in depth that you really saw the bigger vision of what NFTs and we'll just say blockchain can actually do?
For me, it was I love business. I love everything about business. I consume it nonstop, in podcasts, in reading, in social media, in talking. My friend network. I talk business always, and for me, it was kind of how Gary explained it in that relationship. Maybe it was a reference to imagine buying this thing as an investor, Mickey Mouse or whatever, but it was to me as if I was buying a stock, or I was a mini, tiny little angel investor buying a tiny little piece of a chunk of something that's just going to explode in the future. So it was, for me personally, it wasn't in the beginning, anyways, about the art itself and how it looked. I know a lot of people definitely were into that. I am now. I think there's some just absolutely amazing art out there, and just seeing what Austin creates out of people's NFTs. And then the impression that it gives people when they look at those types of things. I'm absolutely into that now. But in the beginning, for me, it was I saw an avenue to invest in the future, in a very small way.
And I'd say prior to that, I personally, I'm a trained watercolor artist, but I've dabbled a lot with digital art, and I've made prints of my artwork and sold them around the Twin Cities area. But the digital artworks were a lot harder to move. So prior to this, the investment side of things, where Jeff comes in on NFTs, I was thinking of it as how can I post these digital artworks that I've created to gain some licensing revenue, or try to expand my network of fans too, if that was something I could do through OpenSea or Super Rare, whatever it was at the time. I was at least intrigued on that end of things.
And for me, when I started buying NFTs, it was more for the art side of it and the creative, elements that were in it. But then I started thinking of like long term of, if somebody offers, you buy an NFT and you can go online, you buy a print. So then you get a printed piece of paper with a frame or whatnot. So my brain has started going even faster about like, okay, how can we make something from this NFT physically that's not just a print? And that's kind of how it sparked it up. And then, Austin and I and Jeff, we went to the drawing board and started sketching stuff and, coming up with this actual physical product to start building.
Yeah, so your product is really unique, and I was going to ask that because a lot of companies that have partnered with big NFT projects or just have been like solopreneurs have gone the route of just a traditional canvas, which started to show a little bit of a market and demand for, as much as I love this digital aspect, and that will be the way that in the future we ideally prefer to share some and like flex our art. For the moment, there's still a big gap of I want to be able to show that off in my home. My office also duels as a collectible room. I want to be able to show my collectibles physically when somebody walks in, right? And even just for me to see it, whether it's my background or just walking into my office and feeling a sense of pride around it. So, what inspired you to go take the non-traditional route outside of Canvas and ultimately led to a very unique design that I think a lot of people wouldn't have thought of with your multiple different layers in the current state.
Yeah, we actually originally, I mean, like again, we were kind of like all on the drawing board, come up with concepts and things, and I remember asking Austin, hey, is this style of art? Have you ever done this before? And I kind of showed him some samples online, and he was like, oh yeah, I used to do this in college. We used to carve out, cardboards to make, 3D objects, and I'm like, this is okay. We got something here. So then all three of us just kept throwing around ideas and figuring out this 3D layered effect, and then it just kind of grew from there.
That's so
And
neat. Awesome.
Austin, I mean, that's what you were doing, right? Like you would carve cardboard, right, and build like 3D art pieces, right?
Yeah, so my background's in architecture schooling. So, a lot of the projects we were working on were very spatial. And so when Mike sort of came at me with this, how can we create something that really stands out both literally and figuratively from your wall and displays something unique to you? My mind was already thinking in that space, slicing a three-dimensional object creates a lot of depth if looked at from the front. And I think right away we were kind of on the same page with what we envisioned, and it was really about how do we physically make this and make it look right. And there's been a lot of tweaks and iterations to make that happen since.
And still going,
Yeah,
We're
and
still
still
ongoing.
growing.
Yep.
Always.
I would also add that, Austin had, because he was designing on the sign side, he could, there's a big term in lean manufacturing called design for manufacturing. So you can't make just this crazy elaborate thing that ultimately you just can't produce because it's just not possible or it's cost prohibitive or whatever it is. So having have him a background in the sign making, he basically pulled from that, and then his art, and more or less, kind of combined. There's a lot of elements that we've had to figure out, and we're still figuring out from a functionality, manufacturing capabilities, shipping capabilities, to make sure it
Size.
doesn't get damaged in shipment, size, price points. There's still a lot to figure out, but we we really knew, you know, going back to kind of what I was saying about the origin story um, when we were saying how do we get involved, how do we get involved, and then we started going down this path. At the end of the day, we do this all day long. We make signs. We're not really deviating very far from what we do, aside from, really tapping into, I would say, the creative talent that we have on our team. I mean, Mike and Austin are designers. I mean, Austin is more of an artist, but Mike comes from a design background as well. So having that creativity, because a lot of times when we get a brand in our sign world, there's really no create. Here's my logo, now make it into a sign. Okay, we there's still nuances, and you have to know signs, and you have to know how to do it. But at the end of the day, you're kind of just taking what they have and moving on. This does combine more creative elements, but from a physical sign making perspective, um, we've just kind of combined a lot of different technologies and manufacturing capabilities in order to make it. So it wasn't like we were a startup. We're still a startup, but we're inside of a company that has been doing this for a long time. So that helped out a lot in, really just ramping up the speed and the ability to make prototypes and things like that, because we have all that stuff already.
Yeah, the background I can imagine definitely helped expedite that process, especially where it sounded like you really had to double down when you found out that VCon was going to be in your backyard, which is a really cool coincidence for you guys. So I'd love to hear a little bit
Mm-hmm.
about your experience. You're going into this massive stadium with 6 to 8,000 people that all know what Web3 is to some extent, and you're basically this is the first like entry into the launch of your company and your product. So what was that experience like over the course of that weekend? outside of all the compliments I'm sure you got on your swag that you were wearing?
The tracksuits.
Tracksuits.
I can actually see a tracksuit in Austin's background back there.
Yeah, he's
Um,
got his there.
Is it the one?
um,
Yeah, it's
yep,
the one.
that's
Yeah, I
it.
mean that's what we wanted to do. I mean, we wanted to go to VCon. Obviously it's you're showing brand, but it's we wanted to take it a step further and have like a team of us. Walk around VCon and we're all wearing the same stuff. I mean, there was times where Jeff would be on the literally on the other side of the stadium, and he'd call and say, "Yeah, I see you walking down the stairs," because the tracksuit's nice and bright pink. And I mean, we would see each other across the stadium, or we'd see people on the streets, FLEXY, and it really made a difference to wear those. But as a whole, walking into that stadium with all those people, it was to me it was like a safe environment. It was just a group of humble people. I mean, when it was all done and I went home, I mean, I drove 20 minutes home. I felt empty, like I was sad. I was sad that it was over. I thought it was a great convention with great people. And every single person we met, they're genuinely happy that you have this product. They're genuinely happy for you to be a part of VFriends, and it's a really good community for sure.
Yeah, and I would say kind of a funny thing leading up to VCon, um, we we were like, oh man, because it's in our backyard, we're gonna get in touch with all the people um, that are in charge of this whole thing, so let's network our way in. We can make everything from really cool signage outside that says VCon, maybe really big letters, and all the wayfinding. So instead of May standing on top of a thing saying, hey, this stage is up this way, we could have we can have people actually pointing, figurines, with things like this stage this way, and it's called wayfinding in the signage world. We were proposing all that stuff, so we got in touch with a few of the local people here that were the feet on the ground. Um, Kind of made our way a little bit into the um, VFriends, people and the VCon people that were putting on VCon, the production company that was, and we had all these plans. Austin drew up kind of a pitch deck type of a thing, and Mike enhanced it quite a bit, and then we got it into their hands, and we were like, oh yeah, this is going to be perfect. It's right in our backyard and everything, and yeah, then the flea market, and we'll be in the flea market, and then we'll we'll be a part of that opening event too, and this will be just amazing. It's going to be all amazing. Well, we struck out on every single one of those things. Not one thing came through,
Wow.
and
Except for the
yeah, for
drone,
various
just the drone. That was it.
except for the drone.
Yeah.
That actually has a lot to do with going forward of our relationship with them. But we were like, wow, how disappointing is this that they got you know, people that have bought VFriends. We've been in, we've all the different things of us being passionate in the community, and basically a big old, you guys are not going to be involved in this type of thing. And I mean, as business people go, you were like, well, we're not entitled to any of this. Um, what are we going to do? So then we were like, all right, let's just start sponsoring private events. Let's get our name out, let's be flashy when we go there with our tracksuits and keep that buzz going. But also let's start just private event type of thing. So then we sponsored sales event. Um, People started calling us, like Mikey and Josh, the guy that does
Joshua
the
Tree.
basketball. Yeah, Joshua Tree, and um, a couple other people, and they're like asking for food truck help and donut trucks and all kinds of stuff. So we just basically started helping people, getting involved in events, and had our flexies at multiple events. We had our own event, which was a launch at a really cool VR studio just out of town, and yeah, it became pretty quickly. It was humbling at first, like I can't believe that, we're not going to be involved in this type of thing. But once you get outside the walls, you can do whatever you want. We can really get after it. So we did, and got a huge splash out of that. Um, yeah. So that, but VCon itself, yeah, like Mike said, absolutely amazing. I mean, just the connections and the people, meeting some of the people in real life that you conversed with in Discord or Twitter. Um, yeah, it was just such a amazing, fulfilling experience, and makes you never to want to miss another VCon, going forward, really. Um, but yeah, one of the connections Mike was talking about, he can tell you about it. But basically, his connection, relevant to flying a drone,
Yeah.
and giving them some footage is really what kind of set up our next steps, going forward.
Yeah. With that, I literally just typed up an email, and then in the subject line I put drone guy that you want to film VCon, and I sent it to Gary, Andy, like the whole group. And then all of a sudden I got a response by Andy, because I think Gary himself forwarded it to him. And next thing you know, then I did all the exterior shots of the stadium. They put like that in their intro video and things like that, and I just gave it to him as a kind, here you go kind of thing. So that, yeah,
Oh,
that kind
that's
of
so
sparked a lot of
cool.
the, yeah. So
No, I love that. So you
that
did
was
the
that was
drone
good.
or you sent those emails prior to VCon as like a last little like, hey, can we at least do this for you?
Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
it
I
was
just I
a
just took a chance, and then they got back, and
yeah.
I'm like, I have my license. I contacted the stadium. I go, I have the rights to fly here. I have all that stuff, and yeah, and then they had a guy that did the FPV stuff inside, and then I did all the exterior stuff.
That's so fun. So what has it been like since then? I mean, obviously VCon was the big launching point, and there's always going to be things that I'm sure you're getting feedback, you're iterating, continuously trying to make it better for the long term. But like, what has that process been like? We're maybe 3 months since VCon now. It's the last 100 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
For
go ahead, Mike.
No, no, go for it, Jeff.
Well, I was just going to say, from Mike's connection with, essentially, getting into, having a direct connect between Andy and some of the team. um, we we had in the back of our minds that we were maybe going to go to NFT NYC, um, because we also were reached out to by another company that had, he's a friend of mine, that works for a company called Aspen NFTs, and he made, or they bought a Bored Ape, and they wanted their Bored Ape to become a Flexi. They're our first customer, actually. And so Austin, went to work on that. They wanted to incorporate their, their company branding with the, Bored Ape that they had bought. So we ended up, Austin made a really cool, design on some of their, elements and whatnot. So that came about, and then we were like, you know what? Why don't we make a VFriends one, um, and just kind of see how that goes. So then, Austin again took it and made another, VFriends one specific. Meanwhile, Mike reached out and said, "Hey guys, we're going to be in New York during, this time. Do you mind if we, come give this to you and, you know meet or whatever?" Well, that spiraled into, um, actually meeting with Andy, and, setting up, getting a meeting on their calendar for us to talk Flexies and VFriends and whatnot. So we made that one. We had the other one, um, and then yeah, we ended up getting hooked up actually through Sal, with, pre NFT NYC at, NFT VIP, uh, which is, Julie Sue's event. And yeah, that's where we, really ended up, kind of connecting, and we did a big event there, and then had had a meeting with Andy scheduled. So then we went and gave that to them. Had a nice sit down with him and in Gary's actual office, which was just wild. I don't even think walking up we even we just thought
Yeah,
we were
no.
walking up and we were gonna sit down at a table or whatever and start talking shop, and he took us right to Gary's office and opened it up, and we were like, whoa,
I've seen this
this is
place before.
actually
Yeah,
yeah,
this
yeah,
is happening. This
yeah,
is happening.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, so we sat down in there and had great conversations about future partnerships and things like that. And yeah, went to the other event at Aspen and revealed they did a big reveal of their Flexi there, and went back to their offices and they showed us kind of where they were going to hang it, and um, made a lot more connections at in New York relevant to that, and yeah, kind of been continuing from there with various conversations.
Yeah, got
So,
to continue that
anything else to add
momentum.
to New York, Mike? Yeah,
No, I think you covered it. I mean, yeah, when we delivered it to Andy, it was, you know, actually Jeff wrote an article because when we went to their building, we checked in, and the security guard, like he asked like who are you going to meet and everything. So we checked in, and he goes, hands down, like what do you say, Jeff? What was his quote? Like this is like they always um, they do what they preach, basically saying, these guys are just amazing people in this building, from all the different businesses. But that was their favorite, is what he said. Such humble people. I mean, even when
yeah,
we walked in, it was like we sat down, and I mean, there was like no stress, nothing. As you're just talking and hanging out. The energy in that place was super humbling. It's great.
yeah. He also was asking a ton about our business as we were waiting, and he's like, I don't ask much about anybody else's stuff. He's like, but the VFriends people have, or the Vayner people have, just cool people they're meeting with all the time. So I always like to ask, what's going on, and he showed a genuine interest. I think twofold, because they have an interesting company and whatnot, but because they're nice to him, and every person in there, they live and breathe that culture that Gary talks about so much. Um, I mean, it was just amazing. You're in this amazing building in New York, and they were really just highlighting the culture of a company, of what is seemingly, or could be construed as just the desk people, that let people in, but it wasn't that at all. It was,
No.
they felt like they were a part of, um, this really cool thing that Gary has, inside his company culture. So
No, it's a really cool
it was an amazing
environment to
experience.
experience, definitely. So it sounds like networking is a big part of what you guys are focused on right now. Would you consider Flexi more focused on like direct to consumer of a product, or more of a like indirectly to consumers through partnerships? What do you think is a bigger part of the business model in the future?
Yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
the meat, where the rubber meets the road. Our company has never been a B2C, direct consumer company. It's always been
Right.
B2B. Um, but it's not, inside this flexi concept, it's really not that hard of, far of a stretch to create a product that is an e-commerce product that people can just jump on and buy, just like no other, especially because the NFT, which is where we're starting, the NFT community doesn't need a lot of uh, pomp and circumstance per se. If they see something cool, that they jump in and they're like, I you know I want my alligator or bored ape, or picture day, which is what this NFT is. I want that in real life. I'm all in, and you're making it a really cool medium, and you just go.
We're
Um,
very impulsive, that's for sure.
Yeah.
yeah, well, at least prior to the
Sure.
dip, but
Yeah.
it um, but our roots are in building relationships with companies, and you know we will always have that direct consumer component, but really, our real meat and where we're heading is starting to work with the projects in the NFT space, but also really aligning our company to further use our roots, which are once NFTs and things start getting into the bigger brands and start moving into more mass adoption, we want to be known as the people that understand how to utilize those NFTs and digital art and create, continue that brand into our visual signage, whether that be interior, exterior, wherever you put it. We just know how to do that and how to incorporate things. So, we're moving into the projects now, and further developing new products to fit that environment. And then kind of steps after that is, we'll be a partner with people like we were talking about earlier. As like if you take VFriends for instance, the real IP isn't necessarily even been revealed or hasn't come out yet. So right now we can live with them in where that project is and where the majority of the projects are, right? Which is individuals buying things as sort of fan art. But as they continue to develop their IP, we can continue to move along with them. So we can stay in that collectible arena, but once they start teaming up with different brands or developing their own brands, and we can continue to develop along with them with the products that we already have and with the things that we do every day. So it's, in addition to that though, is we are starting with the NFT community, but we're essentially a fan art company relevant to collectibles, so we could take a really cool baseball card, and make it into some sort of fan art piece that you put your collection on your wall, or art generally speaking. We can take from an existing medium that's there, make it into a FLEXY type physical piece, and go from there. So we're not necessarily limited to just NFTs. It just happens to be where we're starting, just because it's relevant right now.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off what Jeff was saying is that, with like the NFT projects that are, like you're saying, we can partner with with different ones. One of the things we were talking about recently is that, if there's a project, let's say, they're brand new, and they have 1,500 NFTs that they want to mint. They go to mint them, and maybe they, 500 of them get minted, out of the 1,500 because they're not known yet, right? So what we're thinking is, possibly partnering up with these projects that are just starting out. So that says, maybe the first 100 people that mint this project, it gets paired up with a FLEXY. So we're thinking of ways to kind of do that too, because then what it does is it helps that project to kind of boost their marketing, kind of, like getting their name out there, but it's also an added thing than just the minting of an NFT.
Another avenue is I mentioned Aspen earlier. They're developing an avenue like marketplace type atmosphere. So, and I know a lot of people are going this way. We actually met with Ron Jordan, and he mentioned this as well to us, is that why don't you go into a marketplace where you can take any NFT and make it into a t-shirt or a mug or whatever it may be, and you could be like one of the higher end collectibles that people just basically follow through someone else's channels, and then ultimately just sell it through their channels, and then take the orders in on the back end, so to speak. So Aspen is in the process of developing exactly that, from a marketplace perspective. And we've been in talks with them on how and, how we can go about doing those types of things. So it's, it blows my mind every day seeing different ideas and concepts and things that we can get into. Um, and we'll continue to pursue, all angles, so to speak, as long as we're not deviating too far from our core, you know, which so far we've been very successful at, really remaining at our core, which is essentially manufacturing signs, and this just happens to be a visual art piece. So,
Absolutely. So, and there's a couple of things here. One of the things is around, um, obviously, the people in this space currently are typically the people that are the most curious. They're the ones that are constantly trying to think of new ideas. We're all kind of building foundational pieces of a space that we don't even know exactly where it's going to head and what it's going to do to impact everyone, trying to find our place to play in it individually. And so, one of my curiosities is around, you'd mentioned like your main place to play is around like the collectibles and the collectible side of things. A conversation I'm having with a lot of people is over the course of these next few months, years, as we, ideally get into the next, we'll call it bull run, there's going to be a shift away from as much collectible with a little bit of utility and more focused on like heavy utility with a little bit of collectability, right? And that's only going to become more and more prevalent until people don't even know that they're buying an NFT, but like that's technically what it is. So how do you see your company adapting to that, whether it's trying to innovate what you're doing but without, to your point, getting too far away from like what your bread and butter is, which is around the collectible side of things? Or do you anticipate that will always just be where your main focus is and there'll always be a market for it?
I think it has a long tail in the collectible arena. So I think that will always be an element, but um, seeing as though our background is just making signage, relevant to people's physical places, I think we'll always have a place there. Obviously, signage has been around forever, in various forms, and it it's a visual communication for a physical environment, and we will always have that, as a way to go. It's, I think, just basically allowing a company, like ourselves to understand what's happening relevant to where NFTs are starting, and then continuing to meld into current brands and how they can utilize that um, in the future. And it doesn't necessarily stop either at the physical representation of the sign. There are digital elements that we're working on, that will allow AR, VR, potentially wayfinding, things like that, where we can plant things inside this signage that will continue to help with the digital, road that people are on. And we're already involved in that now. So that will help us, not only in this collectible flexi world, but if you're driving by Ruby Tuesday and you want to know what their special is, and you've got Google glasses on, you could look at their billboard and see, here's today's things, and if you come in right now, in the next hour, we're going to give you $5 off on the hamburger, whatever. Well, we can we can plant things inside of our signage that supply digital assets and communication, to do that we're already, kind of working on as well. So that's, kind of all encompassing. It's not necessarily to the flexi world, but yeah, that's another avenue. But good thing is that the sign world has been, I mean, it's been around forever, and I don't see us not going to places in the very near future. So it'll kind of always be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna ask if we were gonna see Flexi in the metaverse, but it sounds like that's definitely something that, as it starts to come to fruition, will be in mind. So I would definitely want to take this Flexi into my uh, whatever my metaverse is in the future.
Well, that's
um,
actually part of. So that's actually part of it. I mean, you know, when you buy an NFT, it's digital. When you buy a physical art piece, it's physical. So we kept trying to figure out ways to kind of merge. For the people that don't want to buy an NFT just because it's digital, we kind of bridge that gap. So part of the things that we're going to offer in the future is that, like that piece behind you, when you purchase it, we not only take your digital file, make a flexi. Now we take your flexi that's layered, and we turn it back into a digital file that's AR or VR, and then we actually are going to have a flexi lounge where your art piece is now on your wall, but then now you have a token to get into this digital world that you can have meetups. You can show your friends, instead of on your phone, you can meet up virtually on your computer and walk around our gallery, and you can show them your piece as well.
that's what I wanted to hear. Austin, what had you? It sounds like you've got some experience in like digital art and design. What has you most excited about like how things are headed from the digital perspective?
Yeah, wow. What I try to delve into is animated NFT, digital artwork. And what I'm really excited about is being able to inhabit a virtual space that not only is displaying, your collectible art pieces or video game trophies that you've played on in the metaverse, whatever it is, these things could additionally be interactive, animated, changing, maybe updated, and altered at a regular interval or based on some metrics. I think all those variables to not only this physical object but also ties to this interactive element. Obviously I can't envision what that looks like yet because we're not quite there with our VR interactions, but I'm excited to see what develops from that, and how we can play a part in kind of submitting our own art to this evolving place. So
Absolutely. Anything else that you guys want to share before we wrap up?
Hmm. I don't
Final
know. What do you think,
thoughts?
Jeff? Is there any final stuff? I mean,
I
stay tuned.
I
We have a lot of stuff in the works. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just, yeah, stay tuned. We got a lot of stuff coming out.
yeah, we we're not our background is custom, right? So every sign that's made is a one-off. You get a new brand. We'll do full company rebrands where they Austin. This has been a major thing for him in our sign world the last couple of years. Is we'll get a complete rebrand of 150 locations or whatever it may be, and he'll have to go in and essentially we make kind of like a style guide or more or less what if you're familiar with that from the artwork perspective. But basically, okay, if you want sign package number one, here's this one, sign two, and it's basically different sizing, maybe different backgrounds. um, the branding and the logos and things stay the same, but they just might be bigger or done in a different medium, maybe a few different colors or backgrounds, things like that. um, but it's still custom at the end of the day, right? You're not if you have two buildings, typically most brands don't have, unless you're McDonald's or somebody like that, they don't have the exact same building. So, you're putting a Subway on a standalone location or in a strip mall or something like that. It's all one off. So when we first launched, we were like, yeah, let's just get out there and say like we can do anything. We're
Yeah.
a custom shop. Let's just make really cool things with your NFT. Well, to people that just don't know what really cool is, they're like, well, yeah, okay, so what can you do? So what is it? You can't just suggest you do really cool things and it's custom. You have to essentially come up with an offering and an option and then present it to them, and they're like, whoa, that's cool, or no, not really cool, but I saw something else that I really think is cool. Could you make my my Bored Ape look kind of like this, or move it into this realm? And when we launched, we had to suggest a couple of different products. So when you look at our website, there's basically three offerings that are there, um, which is kind of again where we're starting, but we can do anything custom. So our standard offering in option two, which is exactly what you have, Gabe, is the FLEXY that's there, and it's a 2x2 and it's 5 panel. And that's the standard offering relevant to that. But we could make that exact same thing fill up your entire wall. It could be a big, massive installation, that is 10 feet by 10 feet, or 12 feet by 40 feet long. We can do all of that stuff because that's what we do every day in the sign world. So as we continue to move along to people, relevant to that, we'll not only go down the custom road and build those really cool type custom installations, but we'll continue to ideate on what could we get into people's hands that might be smaller, more collectible. Maybe it sits on a shelf or a background. The price point is a lot less than those types of things. We want to make 500 of them versus one off. So that's the constant challenge relevant to the build that we have ahead of us, is staying innovative and relevant to new products that fit into different classifications, and that will really hit with and resonate with people. And like I say, it's almost like we have to innovate it first and then present it to different people, so they're because they just can't necessarily think in the terms of how we do things, with the majority of our products being lit, and having LED components to it, and in this case layering components and routing components, like the one that Mike had earlier, or some of these. So we almost have to just keep on making and making and making, and R&D and R&D, and then prototyping and saying, hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? In order for us to continue to expand. And there's a fine line there. Obviously, it all costs money. And, you maybe make 10 products and one of them might hit, type of a thing. But that's kind of where we are in the snapshot in time right now. We have audiences, which is great, and they're willing to ideate with us. And then every time we come up with a new idea, we have an open relationship to go back into somewhere and say, what do you think of this? Give us feedback, or what do you think of that? So that at least helps. That's half the battle of any type of business, is being able to have a captive audience, to where you can almost have a focus group, so to speak, that gives you immediate feedback on, no, this one's a stinker, or there's a lot of legs here, maybe tweak it in this way or that way, and kind of go about it that way. So it's exciting times for us. We've invested a lot. We're not turning back now. We're too far into it to not. And the good thing is we're starting to get traction too. So yeah, it's great.
Can I ask you a question, Gabe?
Yes, please.
So, I mean, so now that you've, kind of gone through the process of having us design it for you, and now you have your physical custom piece in your hands, like, what's your thoughts? Like, it could be positive, negative, whatever. What's your thoughts on the actual product now that you have it in your hands?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like up when I place the order up till now, I would say the biggest thing for me is always like what is the communication like, especially on a custom piece? What's the collaboration like, and what's the customer service like? right? And so like the communication piece, and I mean really all three pieces right there were fantastic. There was constant communication between, hey, this is like, what are you looking for? Like try your best to communicate it, and then we'll let Austin's creative brain kind of go wild and run with it. As we're putting it together, we'll ask for feedback. Hey, do you like what we're doing here? This is like the 3D drawing of it. This is how we're gonna layer it. Yeah, that's cool. Hey, can you change this? Okay, cool. And so it was very like collaborative in that sense, which was a lot of fun because I don't historically have a like wildly creative brain when it comes to the art side of things. I'm creative on the business side, but that's really about it. So I rely on people like Austin to kind of help translate what my thoughts are into like reality, right? And he did a great job. So, I mean, outside of that, like once I got the piece in, I was wildly excited. It was a lot bigger than I thought it would be in person, and I mean, it's definitely something that I was really eager to get up and set up, just because it's something that I'm like proud of, right? And there's also something that you guys can benefit from, especially around NFTs, is a lot of people have emotional attachments to NFTs, right? The things that they own, especially when they're buying things like V Friends, or not just buying something for a quick flip. They're buying it because it matters to them, and they're not planning on selling it. And that's typically what the kinds of things they would want to put on a canvas, like what you guys do. So there's that sense of like pride, and now I get to see without having to go into my OpenSea or MetaMask my NFT all the time. It's always in front of me. So it was a lot of fun. It was a great process, lots of communication, and overall the product's awesome. So I would say the only thing that's interesting is the because of the layers, like me thinking about how am I gonna have to clean this thing and try and like get in between all the layers without damaging it. But it's a solid, like overall it feels very very solid, and not something that I'm super concerned about.
Canned air.
Canned air.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were both ready on it. That was
Yeah.
gonna be my thought.
Yeah.
Is
should
just
start-
Canned air.
We should
Yeah.
start supplying one of those flat feather dusters with every shipment.
Well, I thought we should make like the feather dusters, but have them like layered, and then we can get the ShamWow guy to pitch it, and then
Yeah. Fingers.
More
Yeah.
partnerships.
There you go.
Right. Do you see we have this belief, which I think teaming up with some of the bigger blue chip type projects kind of lends itself, and maybe we're totally out of whack, but by you having a physical representation that is a higher end piece, so to speak, do you feel now it would be way harder to sell your NFT
Yes.
in the future because you have a physical representation of it?
Absolutely. Because then, I mean, so on your website, one of the things that I saw in the FAQs is, can you do a piece that you don't own? And you basically told the right-click savers to screw off. And I loved that because it's, I mean, if everybody could also just make a copy of my NFT in a FLEXY form, I feel like that would devalue it in the way that, especially traditionally collectibles, the reason I bought it digitally in the first place is because no one can own it, right? And so now that I have it in a physical place, I'm going to sell, if I have to sell my VFriend 2s, which is what these are, I'm going to sell all of the other ones before I sell this one because I have the physical piece of it. And I knew that going in. I mean, it's the same thing. I have even just a canvas piece of my VFriend 1 on the wall that I got way before FLEXY was a thing. And it, like, that alone makes me not want to sell it, right? And it's also my profile picture, and that is kind of my identity around it. It's the reason that people that build brands around their Bored Apes can't go and sell their Bored Apes, especially if it's a real product brand, but even just like their personal brand around it, because they could have 20 other apes, but if they sell that one, that a lot of people identify you with that ape, right? And so to your point, yes, like even just having it displayed, I would feel weird looking at it if I knew I didn't own that, having owned it in the past and sold it. Obviously, there's circumstance that can cause people to have to run into that, and that's a little different. But it definitely makes me hesitate a lot more if I was ever in a position to where I had to sell that one.
That's nice. That's good.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I mean, that kind of it's reassuring, and we feel that way. We've always you kind of talked about it a little bit or touched on it earlier with relevant to canvas prints and things like that, like meta relics and um, some of the prints and things like that. We we knew there was going to be a market for that type of thing, and we can do that.
Hmm.
Um, but we purposefully and intentionally wanted to move to the higher end pieces, meaning um, when you have someone over, or you have some, in your office or in your Zoom background, or whatever it may be, you 110% want to show people that. And not only that, maybe your kids, I know my kids already do this. We have one hanging up in our basement, and my kids' friends, when they're over, are like, oh yeah, your kids told me that this is an NFT, and then they want to talk about NFTs,
Hmm.
and that it's already spread from a legacy perspective to to be proud of this piece that potentially could be passed down for generations, including the NFT itself. So that's really what we were after, and I hope as we continue to build, um, it becomes a showpiece or a thing that people are very, very proud of, and want to keep up in display, and not necessarily put it into a box and put it into storage and things like that. So, or maybe make it into a museum, or um, a gallery of some
Right.
sort.
No, I mean that's a
So
great thought process because to your point, I mean, if I'm packing up my office, I'm moving, right? Like I'm more likely to take the canvas piece and just kind of toss it into a box where I don't think it'll get ripped or stained. But like that's pretty much the extent of care I'm taking of it. Something like this, I'm like personally taking care of, and making sure that it's in a wood frame box, and like not only from like a fragility standpoint but also just because like it's my statement piece. You walk into my office, I could have those two things right next to each other, and I promise they're going to ask about this before they ask about anything else in the room, especially if it's lit up, right? Like it just draws your
Yeah.
attention to it. And so the pieces you choose for those, you're going to typically be more attached to. They'll be your more luxury pieces, anyways. But also, it's like I want, like, if I'm going to show something off or flex, it's going to be my FLEXY, and use it as a gateway to then people start asking questions, especially in the early days about NFTs. What is that? Like, why is it on the wall? What what kind of piece is it? Who makes that? That's really cool. I want one. And that's where it can be really cool to open up the market to have options for B2C, especially if you offer like premium pieces still, but maybe even in like smaller size, whether it's like little picture frames, or even just small cube collectibles that I can have on my desk, right? So I think that's really interesting, and definitely a big part of what gets me excited about when it got delivered.
funny story, when we were meeting with some of the V Friends team, one of the guys they had already had Infinite Objects as a gift goat. They were familiar with a lot of the different digital displays and things that people display their NFTs. And it wasn't even until the meeting, we were talking about Flexies for a little bit and what they can do and how they look and whatever. And eventually the guy's like, so this is not like a digital display. And we're like, no, 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 this is a physical printed art piece that's lit up. And he was like, whoa, oh, okay, I get it now. And it immediately moved towards the conversation of what we just talked about from a legacy piece. Even the digital displays, again, nothing against them, I think they're great. um, and they have a place, but they can change, which is the benefit to them too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that you can, hey, check this one out, and you can have conversations, and it can be a um, evolving art piece, so to speak, to have that,
Mm-hmm.
or like Austin was saying earlier, um, having animated NFTs and things that actually move and things like that, which is fantastic. But for this concept, we never really were even aiming at that. We were saying, we want a physical piece that will carry on forever. We're curating something versus just simply printing something out or displaying something. We're making an additional, piece that people really want to carry on with them for
No, it makes
generations.
so much
And
So,
I'll say
sense.
too, I think the creating layers for the Flexi itself is pulling this digital object physically into our realm, right? Whereas, like you're saying, animated art boards are great, and I agree that they're really cool. But there's still this two-dimensional plane of art that you're not able to peek around and have it's your room. So that too is I think something that gets my attention with them,
Yeah.
even still working on
Well,
them.
I hadn't
So.
even thought about that aspect. Like there's definitely a place for the digital displays, right? It's the reason that digital photo frames exist, right? You want to be able to display
mhm.
things, change it up, but ultimately, in terms of a lifespan, like they don't last forever. Like it's still it's a product that has a screen that the same way TVs do will eventually go out, and it's something that is meant to have things rotate on it, maybe be interactive if it's taking it to the next level. But in terms of your guys' focus around longevity, legacy, like this is like something almost an identity in it, some cases from a collectability standpoint. And then to Austin's point, being able to really take that thing that's digital and not just put it on a flat sheet where it's just more, it's less prominent, but this is like you're pulling it into the room with you. And so you feel a sense of presence and again, just pride around that piece in general. Not to mention, it just looks badass. So, big fans of what you guys are doing, and how you guys have really positioned this. I'm glad you guys went the premium route because that's definitely where all the dots get connected. And I'm really excited to see what you guys continue to do in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you guys hopping on. To everyone listening, I hope this was valuable. Feel free to check out Flexy online. What are your guys' handles for Flexy? Is it just at Flexy NFTs?
FlexyNFTs.io. So it's Mike at, and then Austin at, and Jeff at.
FlexyNFTs.io. You heard it here first. Keep an eye on these guys. They've got a lot of momentum, a lot of experience, and a fantastic product that I definitely recommend checking out and keeping up with. Appreciate all of your guys' time and look forward to talking to you guys soon.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thanks for having us, Gabe.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it.